welcome to Tuesday at 10. And so here's what I've got for you all. First of all, nothing going on with NAR. We don't have anything going on with NAR. IAR. I saw a legal briefing over the weekend, or I read it over the weekend. It probably came in earlier than that. But one of the things that NAR talked about was a House bill that, if it's passed and signed by the governor, would take effect July 1st of 2026. And that bill will require disclosure of referral fees. So if you're getting a referral fee or paying a referral fee, you'll be required to disclose that to the buyer or seller, whatever is appropriate. And there'll be some new forms to support that. So uh, that's coming up. Don't know whether it'll be passed or not, but that's one of the things on the horizon that we may be facing in terms of IAR. It doesn't surprise me since since Department of Justice wants full disclosure concerning compensation for agents, and so um, they want us to be full disclosure with any referral agreements. Um, so which again doesn't really surprise me, just from the standpoint of that's kind of the climate that we're in, is they want full disclosure of everything. Um, so just so that you know, that could be coming in July. There'll be more information on that if that bill gets passed. Um, and there's some tax bills and other bills that they're pushing for. One of the things that they're pushing for is a little less um, government regulation of new homes, because a good percentage, about a third of the cost of a new home, is in regulations that that the builders have to follow. So one of the things that Norwood or IAR, in lobbying on a local basis for us, they would like to see um, the little less regulation concerning cosmetics and things of that sort. So, for instance, this idea that every new home that's built, has to have uh, uh, fiber cement siding, can't have vinyl siding. It has to have varied roof lines or a certain amount of brick or whatever. They would like to see those kinds of regulations go away, which would allow builders to build less expensive homes. So at any rate, we'll see if any of those bills pass. So that's the latest there. From my board's perspective, they've been pretty quiet. I didn't even get my normal MyBor communications from them. Usually I get uh, a communication from them on Mondays, and received nothing. They were closed Monday. I don't know whether they're open today or not. Some places are still closed. The Marion County public libraries are still closed today. So that's what's going on there. In terms of Realty World, which concerns us, um, let's see, I'm looking at my calendar here. Um, so we have a training session coming up on February 4th. So the next Realty World University training session is going to be on Wednesday the 4th at 1 o'clock p.m. And it's going to be video marketing reels and short story strategies. If you're not using video in your business, you need to be using video in your business. You're going to get left behind if you're not doing video. So, as usual, Gabrielle Jeans has tons of information, great information. So I highly recommend that you register for and attend that Realty World University training session. So that's it for those things. Now, questions that you may have, any topic, any questions out there from anybody? No questions? Okay. You have to unmute yourself if you're going to talk. Okay, I don't hear any questions. So I am going to continue on then with a CMA checklist uh, for agents. So we're going to talk about doing CMAs. And everybody seems to have a lot of questions about CMAs. And so I put together this checklist to kind of give you a track to run on and things to think about when you're preparing a CMA. Um, and a CMA, or comparative market analysis, is one of the most important things that you can do for a seller because it's the basis for proper pricing of the listing. And it's the basis for your advice to your seller of the proper price to price the home. Obviously, if you price too high, then the home will sit on the market and become stale. If you price it too low, then you potentially leave money on the table. So you want to price it just right so that you get offers for it in a timely fashion and maybe even multiple offers where it could sell for over list price. So the CMA is the basis for being able to do that. So your ability to do a good CMA is going to be key to that. Now I'm going to share my screen here with you. So at this stage, you should be looking at the CMA checklist. And let me move this thing out of the way. I'm in the way there. Okay, so CMA checklist. So the first thing that you want to do when you're doing a CMA is get a snapshot of the picture. I don't mean go out and take a photograph of it. I mean do the research before you meet with a potential listing client. So you need the address, of course. You're not going to be able to do a CMA without the address. You need to examine what kind of property is it, what's style of the property, how does it fit in with the other properties surrounding it, what year was it built, square footage, and we're most interested with above grade square footage, although the way MIBOR BLC tends to look at total square footage, which includes below grade square footage. So we may have to make an adjustment for that. But you want to get an idea of what your square footage is. Beds and baths, of course. How many bedrooms does it have? How many bathrooms? What size is the lot? Is there a view or something unique about the lot? What is there a garage? And if so, how many bays does the garage have? Is there assigned parking? If so, how many assigned spots? Uh, the parking part kind of relates to condos, where you may have a condo in a building, and so there's assigned parking places for tenants. And so, how many parking spots do you get as a tenant? uh, or are they unassigned? And then you want a general overall impression of the condition and notable updates. Now, some of this information you're not going to get until you meet with your seller. because that's when you're really going to get an idea of what the condition is. But before you ever go, you can do these other things typically before you even go. And one of the best sources for this information is the RPR tool, Realtors Property Resource, that NAR provides to us. And you can run a NAR report for any potential listing, and it'll give you almost all of this information. So um, it may even give you some inside pictures if it was ever listed. So the RPR is a great tool to use right out of the box. In fact, I probably ought to add this to the list of things here to do is do an RPR report on your property. So that's step one is do a property snapshot and gather this information. Now you want to do your comparable selection. And you want to look at solds because the solds are the ones that really are going to determine what the market value for your property is, because that's what an appraiser is going to look at. And so we have to think like an appraiser. So we need to put our appraiser hat on and think like an appraiser. So thinking like an appraiser, what the appraiser wants when they're looking at praising a property is they want 3 to 5 sold comps, preferably within the last 90 days or 6 months if they don't find anything in 90 days, 6 months. So that would be their prime selection. Now, if they can't find the comps that they want, they could go further back, but they don't like to. They like to keep it within 3 to 6 months. So if you've got something that sold a year ago, the appraiser is going to tend to not look at it unless they can't find any other comps. So they're going to discount that because it was too long ago. They also want the same neighborhood. So if there are 3 to 5 sold comps in the same neighborhood, same legal description, then that's the comps that they want to see. They don't want to see comps in another neighborhood that's nearby. They want to see comps in the neighborhood. So the first thing that you do is you look for comps in the neighborhood. And they would prefer older comps in the neighborhood over newer comps that are in a different neighborhood. Because the ones that are in the same neighborhood are tend to be more uh, indicative of the value for that neighborhood. Now, let's say that uh, you can't find the comps in the neighborhood. Well, then you want to make sure that your comps are coming from a highly similar area. So if there's a nearby neighborhood, how does it look? So, for instance, let me give you an example here. So, I used to live in Eller Trails. That's a neighborhood that was built by Davis Homes. Now, there are two nearby neighborhoods. One was called Eller Run, and the other one was called Eller Commons. I think it was Eller Commons. And those neighborhoods were also built by Davis Homes. Now, the homes in Eller Run were very similar to the homes in Eller Trails. The homes in Eller Commons were different. They had smaller lots and were cheaper homes. So if you're doing a CMA for Eller Trails and you can't find what you need in Eller Trails, you could go to Eller Run because it's similar. I would probably not go to Eller Commons because those houses are quite a bit less expensive. So that's sorry about my dog barking here in the background, but so at any rate, that's one of the things to keep in mind. So same neighborhood, highly similar area. Um, Within a mile typically of where your property is located. So you could also use a mileage tool and draw a circle within a mile. Um, or if it's a kind of a urban area where it's in, let's say the Broad Ripple area, you could set up a grid kind of search for certain blocks. So north of Kessler to 62nd Street, and that area that is identified as Broad Ripple. So so you want to keep in mind that you want to keep those comps as similar as possible. They should also be a similar size. 10 to 15% of the original. So if you do this search for comps and then you're looking at the comp and you see, hey, this comp's way bigger than mine. So I've got a 3 bedroom, 2 bath that's got 2,500 square feet, and I see another house and it's a 4 bedroom, 3 bath with 4,500 square feet. That's not going to be a very good comp because it's not of similar size. So you want similar size, similar age and condition. Again, if you're within a neighborhood, then most of those homes were built at a similar time, so they're going to be about the same age, and they're going to be very similar in terms of condition and et cetera. And they're going to be in the same school districts. A lot of times, a school district is relevant. So, for instance, some of the addresses in the Broad Ripple area, or what would be considered Broad Ripple, um, kind of an extended Broad Ripple, some of those addresses are in Washington Township schools. Some of those addresses are in IPS schools. And so sometimes it may be considered an advantage to be in one school district over another school district based on ratings of the school. And that then may cause those properties to bring more money. So you want to be conscious of that when you're looking at comparables that you're trying to compare your property to. So the more similar they can be. So, for instance, if yours has a basement, then I would not use properties that don't have basements. You should compare it to properties that do have basements. If yours doesn't have a basement, then don't compare it to properties that do have basements because it's going to really throw off. They're too dissimilar. So if at all possible, try to get a house as close to yours as you can. So if you have a 2 bedroom, 1 bath bungalow with a basement, then try to find 2 bath, 2 bedroom, 1 bath bungalows with basements to compare it to. Now, could you use a 3 bedroom? Sure, but you're going to have to adjust for that extra bedroom. Could you use a 1 bedroom? Sure. As long as they have basements, you could adjust for those bedrooms. But again, you want to try to stay within the size range. So if you have a if you have a 1 bedroom property, it's going to be difficult to compare that to a 3 bedroom, 2 bath property if you got a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. See what I'm saying? So so that's your comparable selection. So you want to go through the BLC and you want to look for those comparables. And we will have a future training session that talks about how to use the BLC to do your CMA and how to search for properties and things of that sort. So we'll take a look at that in a coming session. We don't have enough time today to do that. Now, you also want to look at the actives and pendings. While you will not use those necessarily for comparables because they haven't closed, They may close within the time frame that of your sale and be used as a comparable by an appraiser in the future. So you do want to be aware. So if you're looking at active and pending, you want to look at maybe 2 to 4 active properties that are very similar to yours, and maybe 1 to 3 under contract listings. And you're going to look at them and just note the list price versus what you think the likely sale price will be, and identify any direct competition that buyers will compare. And that's particularly applicable to the actives. Okay. So, what are the actives in your neighborhood and how do they compare with the property you're thinking about listing? Are they better or worse? That will give you an indication of whether you can go up or down in price. Um, and it will also give you an idea. So, if there's no competition, then that may tell you that your property be in demand because there's nothing available in that neighborhood. Um, but that's part of your CMA process as you go on. So that's taking a look at your actives and pendings. And now the next step is you're going to make your market adjustments. So you're going to go in and you're going to adjust for square footage. And remember, so if you have your listing and it has, say, 2,500 square feet or 2,000, let's say 2,000 square feet, and the competitive listing has 2,500, then you have to deduct 2,500 from the square footage of the comparable to make it equal to our property. But the same thing applies if they have 1,500 square feet, then you have to add 500 square feet to be equal to your 2,000 square foot comparable. So you're going to add and subtract square footage based on how the comparable compares to your listing, the house that you want to list. You also are going to adjust for bedroom and bathroom count. So bedrooms, usually when I'm giving value to these things, I usually assign a value of about $50 per square foot for square footage. And I usually assign a $2,500 value to a bedroom and $2,500 to a bathroom, or 1,500 for a half bath. So those are adjustment numbers that I use, and I use those primarily because I've seen appraisals with that adjustment on there. So I tend to use those adjustment levels because that's what I see appraisers using. And remember, when we started this, I said think like an appraiser because they're going to have to agree with your valuation of the property once you get it sold. And if they don't agree with your value, then you may end up having to adjust the value down or lose the sale. So you want to be able to support the value that you're listing a property for with the appraiser. So that if the appraiser asks, hey, what comps did you use? You can show them the comps to support the price that you're offering. So,
Hey, Richard, no question. How much do you
yeah.
get for a garage?
Okay, garage. I usually give, depending on the level of build, I usually give 1,500 for a garage space. If it's a more expensive home, I may give 2,500 for the third or fourth uh, garage bay. Uh, and part of that also becomes what's the neighborhood like? If the neighborhood predominantly has 3-car garages and yours has 2 cars, then I definitely want to deduct for that because that's not going to be. But by the same token, let's say yours has a 3-car garage, but every other home in that neighborhood has only 2. I may have to not get full value for that third bay because people in that neighborhood aren't necessarily looking for a third bay, although that certainly gives you an advantage over your competition.
I have a hard time with my clients because they're like that. They're like, okay, I'm gonna build another bathroom, and they're gonna give me like $7,000 more. Like, no, you're not gonna get that. That's too much.
No, you're not.
You only get
You're not
so
going to
much
get.
money for adding something.
Yeah, you're not going to get the money out of any renovation you do. Okay, you're not going to get the money back. You might get up to 75% back, depending on the quality of the renovation and does the
Mhm.
renovation fit the neighborhood. So, for instance, you take a home that's in a neighborhood where the preponderance of homes have vinyl flooring and carpet and um, uh, laminate countertops, and then you go into your home and you put in granite and wood floors and tile and etc. You're not going to get that money out of that house because it's over improved for the neighborhood. And the appraiser just isn't going to give that money because it's unique. The appraiser is going to basically deduct because it doesn't fit the neighborhood. I personally had this happen to me in a sale where my client had done a lot of work and had improved their house above the fit and finish for the neighborhood. So garage parking, though, you want to take a look at that. Updates versus the original condition. Okay, so you do give value for updates. So if you've got a new kitchen and new bathrooms and they were quality upgrades and updates, that's going to bring some extra money versus one that has the original bath and the original kitchen. So updates definitely affect your value. Now, again, you have to look at your competition. So if every single one of your competitors was updated, so the comparables that you were using, they were updated and yours is updated, well, then you're just equal to them. You're not any better than they are because they were upgraded too. So you have to take a look at that when you're looking at your comps. Were they updated or not? And that's when you make your adjustments. So updates versus original condition, and then the overall condition. Is this a fixer-upper that you're going to advertise for investors to buy, or is this a turnkey? Hey, you don't have to do anything in this house. You can just move right in. Don't have to do a thing. So make that part of your adjustment as you're going through. A lot of these things are judgment calls. And when you're doing a judgment call, try to be conservative. Don't give more value than value due, and don't take away too much because then you'll end up other underpricing. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to look at the market and the market specifically in your neighborhood, your area. What's going on? What's the average days on market in your neighborhood? If you see 30 days on market average in your neighborhood, then guess what? You're probably going to take 30 days to sell your property too. Now, some of those properties, though, may have sold quicker. And if you look at those properties that sold quicker, you'll probably see that they were updated or nicer homes. Because I've always said that people always the best buy, the best value for the money in any given price range. And those homes sell quick. The ones that don't sell quick are the ones that aren't as good a value. So average days on market, list to sale price ratio. What are homes selling for? Are people having to do multiple price reductions to sell homes in that neighborhood, or are they selling day one over list? So what's going on in the market? List to sale price ratio. Price reductions. Have there been price reductions to sell a home? How many were done? Um, what's the inventory level in the neighborhood. And not only what is it currently, but what has it been? So in other words, is this a hot neighborhood and so there's no inventory because houses are selling like crazy in a neighborhood, in which case there'll be a lot of activity in the neighborhood? Or is it just a kind of a backwater neighborhood that homes don't sell very often, and so you don't have a real good, it's not necessarily a big in-demand neighborhood. So you have to kind of try to figure that out. And then what's the buyer demand in for that particular neighborhood? And so once you've done all your research and you've got all these numbers, now it's time to come up with a pricing strategy. So you could go with a conservative pricing strategy, which is going to maximize competition. You could go with market price, which is going to give you a balanced exposure, or an aspirational price. Okay. I always call it, do you want to do the retail method of pricing or the real estate method of pricing? And I got this from Gabrielle Jeans. So what's the difference? Well, the retail method of pricing is you price it as high as you think that it might sell for. And then if it doesn't sell, you keep reducing the price until it does sell. That's the retail method. That's what retailers do. They put something on the shelf for the highest possible price. If it doesn't sell, then they reduce the price. They run sales on it, etc., until it does. Whereas the real estate method is you put it on the market for market value or maybe even a little below, and you hope to sell quickly and get offers over list potentially. So those are the two strategies that you use for pricing. Um, and then you're going to have a recommended list price that you recommended them. Now I would go with a range, price range, and strategy. You want to explain to them why you're recommending a certain pricing strategy. And it needs to be based on the statistics that you've already generated for yourself to to come up with the price in the first place. So you need to explain that to them, which comes next, seller communication. You need to explain your comparables in plain language to them.
Hola, Brenda, buenos días.
Aló, buenos días, le estoy llamando porque sí me llamó la
I Okay. Uh, so you need to explain your comps in plain language so that they understand how these other properties compare to yours. Maybe even show them pictures or get online and show them the actual properties, email them. Then you want to address any outliers and emotional comps. So every now and then you'll see a comp that just sells for way more than it should have, and that's called an outlier. And that's probably not going to be a good comp, and you probably want to point that out to them that it was probably unusual circumstances that caused it to get that price. Same thing with unusually low comps, because you may find comps in a neighborhood, let's say that they're all selling for 250 range, and then suddenly you get one that sells for 200. Well, that typically is going to be an outlier. Maybe it was a condition issue or a location issue. Backs up to a train track or something, and that's why it's sold. So you want to discuss those outliers. You want to set expectations for showings and feedback. So you want to let them know what happens and how showings occur and how you work with broker bay. And also you want to prepare them for the fact that agents do not always give feedback, because that's one of the most frustrating things to sellers is when they have a showing and they get no feedback. And you want to prepare them for that up front, so that later on when they don't get any feedback, they're reminded, oh yeah, Jim told me that I might not get feedback on every showing because the agents don't always give feedback. And you want to let them know that, hey, I reach out to them multiple times. If they don't, respond to me after 4 times, there's not much I can do. So there are going to be times where we don't get any feedback, and it's just because the agent decides not to give us any. And we want to discuss our price adjustments up front before we ever list the property. So if we don't get sales by such and such date, or we don't get showings, here's what we need to do. So talk about that up front. That way, later on, when you're in that circumstance, it won't be a surprise to them, and they won't be as upset as they might be if you've already discussed what you need to do if we're not getting the showings, or if the market changes on us, or if we're not getting offers but we're getting showings. So we want to discuss that. And then final review, you want to make sure your data supports your price recommendation. You want to make sure your CMA is clean and visual and easy to follow. And we're going to look at how to do that coming up meetings. Talking points, make sure you're prepared for objections before you go on your appointment. And make sure that you have clear next steps. What happens next? Are next, do you arrange for photos and keys and et cetera, or what happens next? And you want to make sure you end up with that. So I'm going to send this checklist out to you. Any questions over the things that we've discussed so far? If you have a question, please unmute.
I've been having a hard time with my listings, because my clients say my client wants listed at 250, and I've been trying to convince them to put it a little bit higher because they don't want to pay the commission from the other realtor. But then I tell them to put it a little bit higher. That way we can work out the commission because it's better for them to pay it. But I'm afraid for now it's been working. I've had 3 now accepted offers, and it's been working because when I get the offer, it's been lower than what it is, but my clients have been accepting it. I'm kind of afraid one of these days they're going to be like, no, I don't accept it because I don't want to pay the commission. I'm not going to lower the price. And I'm the one telling them
So
to hire a
yeah,
little.
the way I handle the buyer agent commission, okay, from a listing side, is I tell my people, and I give them a estimated net proceeds from the sale. And
Mhm.
so they get that estimated net proceeds. In that estimated net proceeds, I budget for 3% to the buyer's agent. Okay. And I let them know, look, this is just a number that I put in here, just a budget number. The We will negotiate that with the buyer in the purchase agreement. So the way it works is they'll submit a purchase agreement to us, and in all likelihood, it will have some amount for buyer agent compensation. And we can negotiate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the net proceeds of the sale. So I'm going to do this net sheet for you based on actual numbers. And then we'll decide how to uh, counter that offer if we don't want to accept it. So we could counter back at a higher price, or we could counter back taking the buyer agent compensation out. So there's a number of strategies that we could follow in our counter if we don't want to pay that amount. But it's all negotiable. So it's negotiable in the purchase agreement. We don't negotiate it ahead of time. We negotiate in the purchase agreement. And my 3%, I just picked that out of the air as a budget number. And so we're looking at maybe paying 3%. And here's what we would net if we do that at this price. Okay. So that's how I would handle that with them.
That's what
And
I've been doing. That's what I've been doing, telling them that,
yeah,
and doing the next
yeah.
shift.
And then, when you get your offer, then you do a net sheet and show them what their net is, because the net to them is all that matters. How
Mm-hmm.
much money are they going to walk away with at the end of the day? They could care less whether or not they have to pay compensation to a buyer broker. They could care less as long as they can get the money they want out of the property. So they want to walk away with a certain amount of money. And if they can do that, then they don't care about the rest. Well, they do. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
want the most money they could get.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
again, one of our counsels is if you get an offer and there's say, well, I don't want to pay the buyer agent commission, so we counter back that way. Then you know the buyer agent may the buyer may tell the buyer agent, well, I don't want to buy this house then because I don't want to pay your commission, your compensation. So let's find another house where the seller's willing to pay buyer broker compensation, and we'll just forget this one. So when you counter back trying to take the compensation out, it could mean that your buyer will go away. So you need to counsel your seller that that could happen because it's all negotiated. Remember, it's negotiation. So any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop stop the share, and I'm going to stop the recording.